All right, Matthew. Washington is looking at a hard reset, and Mario Cristobal has got Cam Ward in Miami now. Let's talk about that and a few other things right after the stinger. Felix Sharpe here, Matthew Bruening there from campus2canton.com. We're joining us here on a Sunday. Sunday before the NFL playoffs start. Help us get to 3,000 subscribers. We're that close. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out campus2canton.com. Matthew, I want to get to Cam Ward. I want to get to Washington. But before we do that, we had some news break about 5 minutes before we started here in that Texas has landed Isaiah Bond. I mean, you can react to this news, but I want to talk specifically about whether or not we think that this is a good landing spot for him, considering the fact that, you know, he wants some additional opportunity and to be in an offense that's going to suit his skill set. But react to this this news.
Yeah, I think it's a great spot for him. We believe in Steve Sarkisian as a offensive play caller. I do think that that is going to be a good offense overall. They return a lot of that offensive line. Most of that offense now with Quinn Ewers coming back, and you'll have Jonte Cook step up. The wide receiver room is going to be completely different. So that's where you're going to have the questions, right? Jonte Cook, true freshman, who we loved, is likely going to be a starter. Matthew Golden, who has been very good at Houston when healthy, transfers over. He's going to be one of their starters as well. Now you have Isaiah Bond, who spends most of his time in the slot. So if I'm looking at it, I'm assuming that those are going to be your three starters. You know, I know you've had your questions, as have many, about what Quinn Ewers is or isn't at the quarterback position and what he'll be able to do for Bond. But I do think that he will fit in very well with this Texas offense. And I think you could argue now Texas has the best starting wide receiver core in all of college football with those three. I mean, Isaiah Bond is an extremely good wide receiver, as is Matthew Golden and Jonte Cook.
All right, so Isaiah Bond jumps into the transfer portal right after Nick Saban announces his retirement. I think of what Isaiah Bond is. He is on the Jalen Waddle spectrum. I don't think that that's hyperbole saying that. And so presumably he goes to Texas for additional opportunity. And I'm not sure that he's going to get the opportunity that he thinks. And here's why. I actually said this on Twitter. Is Quinn Ewers really a better option for Isaiah Bond than Jalen Milroe? You think about where Isaiah Bond operates in the field. Deep along the sidelines would probably be, you know, his best attribute, being that deep threat. Well, last year, Jalen Milroe on throws over 20 yards was 35 for 67, completing 52% of them. Those are the areas where you want Isaiah Bond taking the top off the defense. Quinn Ewers, your boy, 16 for 47 for 34%. And we know this. We've seen him overthrow Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy's yards per catch has been less each of the last two seasons than it was his freshman year when he had Casey Thompson and Hudson Card throwing him the ball. Quinn Ewers, that's not his game. Now let's look at the stats on passes 10 yards from the line of scrimmage, 10 or more, 10 yards, between 0 and 10 yards to the line of scrimmage. Jalen Milroe was 52% on those throws, 34 for 67. Now, Quinn Ewers, to his credit, completed 68% of those passes, 72 for 105. However, 69 of that 105 were over the middle in the area where somebody like JT Sanders would operate, not an area where Isaiah Bond would be. I think the statistics show, Matthew, that if Isaiah Bond wants to hit his ceiling, Quinn Ewers isn't the quarterback that's going to help him do that, especially when you consider the fact that they've got Jonte Cook and Matthew Golden also to throw the ball to.
So here's why I disagree with you.
I just read statistics. What are you talking about? You disagree with the facts?
I'm about to give you statistics on why you're wrong. I don't disagree with you, and that is where Isaiah Bond should be used. But that's not where he has been used. Isaiah Bond has been used in the short and intermediate areas at Alabama. Actually, 56% of his receptions, so over half of them, came behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards. Because Jalen Milroe, while yes, completed 50% of his passes deep, all of the, I'm sorry, no, where was it? Where is it? He completed, 52% of all of his 35 completions that he completed downfield. Yes, he did a great job on that, 50% of it. Isaiah Bond wasn't used that way, though, in Tommy Rees's offense, and he goes into the slot. That's where I think he's going to play. Do you agree with that? Before I continue, Isaiah Bond's probably going to be the slot wide receiver for Texas.
All of those guys can play inside and out. Jonte Cook, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond. I would not peg him into one particular role because there's no, all of those guys are versatile.
They are. Bond's smaller than both Matthew Golden and Jonte Cook by a little bit, not much. Bond's listed 5'11". Both Matthew Golden and Jonte Cook both lift.
I see what's happening here. You have to make Isaiah Bond the slot receiver to support your argument.
But I do believe that is where he's going to play. And why I'm going to put that in there is because where was Jordan Whittington used? All in Texas, in the middle of the field, just like Ja'Tavion Sanders. Matter of fact, he was used mostly in ding, 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 where you just said Quinn Ewers thrived in his game between the 10 and 19 passing yards. That is where Jordan Whittington got almost 50% of his receptions. So if Isaiah Bond is going to be used there, then one Quinn Ewers, who you said had a 68% completion percentage and thrived in the middle of the field, is where Isaiah Bond is going to be, where Jalen Milroe, as you mentioned, completed only 52% of those passes. They used Isaiah Bond in a way at Alabama in more of these screen and quick hitting games. I don't think Sark's going to use him that way. I actually do think Sark is going to allow him. Now, where I will, let me finish that thought and then I'll get to the deep part. I think that they're going to use him the way that they use Jordan Whittington, maybe not as much as a blocker, because I'll be honest, I don't know if Isaiah Bond is as good a blocking wide receiver as Jordan Whittington is, but they will use him in that middle part of the field where Quinn Ewers thrives. Now, where he will struggle is, yes, if Quinn Ewers cannot figure out the deep ball, then he's not going to be used that way, but that's fine. I don't think that they want to use Bond that way. I think it is going to be a good fit for him. He was the leading receiver for Alabama last year with a whopping 600 yards on 40 attempts because Jalen Milroe's not a good passer. Now, if he would have stayed there with maybe Will Rogers, who I do think at least is not like a better athlete or anything than Jalen Milroe, but probably would have gotten him the ball, he probably would have thrived more than maybe what he's going to do at Texas. But I disagree with Texas being a bad landing spot because of what I expect him to be used as a wide receiver in the slot position, where Quinn Ewers will thrive having that player there. Because yes, you're right, JT Sanders did get a lot of the work in the middle as well. JT Sanders is gone though. They don't have that dominant tight end anymore. I think that's where Isaiah Bond's going to be.
I mean, you have to support your argument. I think the question here is, you can answer in the chat, is Quinn Ewers the player to unlock all three of these wide receivers? We know that Steve Sarkisian can do it because we saw it with Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith. I'm missing somebody there, but there was that year they had exactly. They had three wide receivers go over 1,000 and a fourth at like 900 or something like that. We haven't seen anything like that with Quinn Ewers. And I do want to clarify because I botched stating those statistics. The statistics that I read, 52% on passes of 20 yards or more for Jalen Milroe, and 10 yards, between 10 and 20 yards. Those were the stats. So between 20 yards or more, Jalen Milroe was 52%. Between 10 and 20 yards, Jalen Milroe was also 52%. Quinn Ewers, 16 of 47 on passes traveling 20 or more yards, and on passes between 10 and 20 yards, he was 68%. But again, a large majority of those passes between 10 and 20 were not on the outside where I think Isaiah Bond is going to be. They were in the middle of the field where JT Sanders operated. So I just want to note that and clarify that because I botched saying those stats here up front. How do you answer that question, Matthew? Is Quinn Ewers the guy that can unlock all three of those things? And we see, an offense similar to like 2019 LSU or those Steve Sarkisian Alabama teams. Is Quinn Ewers the person to do that?
Dang it, I thought I had my thing unmuted. No, I do not think so. I think he can get two of them, and I think it's going to be Bond and Golden, if you want me to be honest. I don't think it'll be Jonte Cook. As much as we love Cook, I think he's going to be the one who suffers there because, again, and yes, this is in a way kind of going to my argument that I'm making, who was Quinn Ewers' like bailout weapon most of the past 2 years he's been there? It's been JT Sanders, and they won't have that. I do think that's where Bond is going to thrive because Jordan Whittington got most of his as well in the middle of that field. 94% of his targets came in the middle of the field. So if Bond is used in that role, I think he's got to be one of them. So he only supports maybe one other weapon, and I think it's probably Matthew Golden over Jonte Cook.
And that's one thing that I'm getting at here. There is a chance that Jonte Cook is overdrafted in Campus to Canton startups this year, not because of the he doesn't have the talent, but because he's probably not in an offense where the quarterback can raise the tide of all the ships, maybe one or two, but not all. And I agree with you. Jonte Cook may be the one that's left out here, or the wide receiver that ends up operating on the outside. Yeah. Again, Xavier Worthy had that great freshman season. He averaged like 15 yards per attempt. His yards per catch has never been higher than it was that one freshman season. Okay. Oregon, Matthew, is also building here on the outside and just in general at the skill position. We're a college fantasy program, channel, website, whatever you want to call it. So that's what we care about. Oregon adds Dylan Gabriel. They got Dante Moore. They had Evan Stewart, and that's a big deal. That is a big deal. People don't know Evan Stewart because he was injured all of last year and he's been like on Texas A&M. Evan Stewart was my wide receiver 2 coming into the season. Now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone, he's my wide receiver 1. So Oregon just added my wide receiver 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's the best wide receiver in all college football. So you could put it that way.
I think Evan Stewart is just really well-rounded, and you got Tez Johnson there, who's been on Bruce Feldman's freak list here for a couple of years, including when he was at Troy. He's coming back. He's going to be there. They've still got Gary Bryan Jr., who can play a traditional slot role. You still got Jerrion Dickey, who can be an alpha if we, see more than one catch from him next year. He was the number 2 wide receiver in this freshman class, dealt with a meniscus injury. I can't tell if he wasn't healthy or if there was something else going on there. But when you look at Oregon, Matthew, going into the Big Ten next year, this is the best set of skill positions in the conference. And Jordan James, he's going to take a big step next year, in my opinion. I want to get your opinion on Oregon skill positions here going into next season, but I just want to read what I wrote in the last year's freshman guide on Jordan James. Jordan, and he's one of my favorite backs in the class, by the way. Jordan James is a no-nonsense bowling ball types on the Mayan Williams, Ramondre Stevenson spectrum, one of the better interior runners in the class. Like Stevenson, James has the feet of a much lighter runner, impressive for a back of his size and frame. Although not outwardly aggressive or physical in the form of shoulder-thumping collisions, James' thick frame causes tacklers to simply fall off of his hips and waist through inertia. It's a trait that reminds me specifically of Stevenson's last year at Oklahoma. I mean, if you're going to go in the Big Ten, you got to win games in the cold in November and in October if it gets cold on global warming and everything. But you have to be a little bit balanced. That's Oregon. Oregon can beat you through the air or through the ground. They probably have the best skill positions in the Big Ten going into 2024.
Yeah, I would say that the argument is going to be between them and Ohio State. But if you look at what Oregon's returning on defense and offense, like obviously they lose Bo Nix. That's going to be a massive blow because while Dylan Gabriel is a very good college quarterback, I don't think he has the upside that Bo Nix does. But I don't think it's unfair to say Evan Stewart's the best wide receiver in the Big Ten right now. Jordan James is – see – the hard part I'm coming to, if we're talking overall team, I'm going to give the edge to Oregon. I think. Because Ohio State brought back 18 starters now from last season. That defense.
How many of those are on defense? We're talking about
a lot of them. Travion Henderson is the only one. Offense, and they brought back their left guard. But they also bring in Judkins in the portal, who, I mean, that now I think you could argue is the best running back duo in all of college football. I would take both of them over Jordan James. I'm taking Evan Stewart over everybody right now in the Ohio State wide receiver room. I probably am taking Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. I personally don't think Will Howard's that good, but there are a lot of people who do. So, like, I don't know where but I'm probably taking Gabriel over him, but I'm taking Ohio State's offensive line over Oregon's. I'm probably taking Ohio State's defense. So, like, I think it's right there. And they play each other, I want to say, in the first 4 weeks of the season. So, like, that could be the, like, who ends up winning the Big Ten. I think it's those two right now because Michigan is losing so many players to the NFL draft. We still don't know what's going on with Harbaugh and McCarthy yet. Like, I think you have to argue they're the best right now. And if overall wide receiver room, I would give the edge to Oregon as well.
So the question for Ohio State, if we're making this comparison between Oregon and Ohio State, is does Ohio State have the player to unlock the receiving weapons? The receiving weapons there. Is Will Howard going to unlock Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, and Emeka Egbuka? I think that those are your projected starters. I think the answer to that is unequivocally no, which is why they have 2 running backs on the team. I mean, we're looking at – somebody was asking me about trading for Carnell Tate. I was like, we're looking at Ohio State next year being a run-heavy team. I mean, Will Howard can also run the football, and you got Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. I'm not saying that they're going to look like Michigan's offense, but they might look like more like Michigan's offense than they have in seasons past.
I mean, prior to what people believe, they were already doing that last year. It's something I mentioned. It was a 50-50 split on running and passing the ball last year, especially in early and neutral downs. Like, I think they're going to continue that. Where I've said I think Will Howard is a good fit for Ohio State is he will distribute the ball the way Ryan Day wants it to. We've talked, both you and me have talked about this for years. Yes, Will Howard can run the ball. Ryan Day doesn't want him to run the ball. Man, that dude had a heart attack every time Justin Fields took off, and he is one of the best athletes in college football at the time. He does not want Will Howard to run. I think they are happily going to hand off the ball possibly 30 times a game if they have to, splitting it between Travion Henderson and Quinshon, because they also have Dallin Hayden back there, who's also a very good running back. I don't know that he only throws it like 18 times a game like JJ McCarthy did, but I don't think you're wrong. I think Ryan Day wants to win, and he sees you've got to play a little bit of bully ball. They've been a finesse offense the past couple of years. I don't think we'll have. That's why I say, like, I would give a massive edge to Dylan Gabriel over that, because Dylan Gabriel is going to be throwing that thing all day long. He's probably going to be passing for 30, 40 times a game at times for Oregon.
This reminds me of that Sony Michel and Nick Chubb backfield. Like, what is your plus option there in the offense? It's kind of, you have a new quarterback who's not familiar with the system. Why not turn around and put it in Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson's belly, maybe even more than 30 times a game? I mean, I can see this Ohio State team being, 60% running the ball 60% of the time, especially like on first and second down. That's just me. So if you got Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss was already a year 1-0, if I remember correctly. Right. So, I mean, we probably don't have hope for him anyway. I don't know who's going to be. They might have one wide receiver that has a Marvin Harrison Jr. types, impact on the game, where even though they don't pass the ball a lot, they throw it to one player. We might be looking at that, and I don't have no idea if it's going to be Tate or Inniss. Probably not Inniss.
I think it's going to be Mecca. I would think it's going to be a Mecca. With the way they love to move those guys around, like him and Marvin were the only two who got over an 80% snap share last year at wide receiver. I think he's the only one who will keep that. I mean, I would not be surprised. I said this. I know Volume Pigs wrote an article for us about this recently, that Ohio State has never had a freshman wide receiver go over 500 receiving yards in their.
And I forgot Jeremiah Smith. Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith, I think, is going to be on the field a decent amount. Carnell Tate, look, we like him. I think he's going to develop into a really good wide receiver. He's not Marvin Harrison Jr. He's just not, folks. And I know Ryan Day doesn't play freshmen a lot, but I think we're going to see those guys moving in and out due to how much they're going to be running the ball. I think Mecca will be the one, because they will move that guy all over the offense. I mean, they tried Tate in the slot in spring last year, and they didn't like it. They'd never put him back in there. So I think it's going to end up being Mecca.
LL adds this comment in the chat. He was adding to the comment on Bond. He said it feels like it's a lateral move for Isaiah Bond, and DeBoer could have opened him up. I mean, DeBoer's offense is a vertical offense, and yeah, I think that's true, depending on who DeBoer got into that. Even if it's Jalen Milroe, I think that Kalen DeBoer would have made would make Jalen Milroe better, or if they bring in another traditional quarterback to implement Kalen DeBoer's game plan. I agree. Like, that's his offense is going to be more vertical, more opportunities for a player in a skill set like Isaiah Bond. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're on the road to 3,000. What are you going to say, Matt?
Maybe I'm wrong here. I could have swore they said Will Rogers is following him. I know Milroe left. Milroe is not at Bama anymore. He entered the transfer portal last night.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, Milroe went to the transfer portal. I thought Rogers, but now I'm looking and I'm not seeing it. So maybe I was got by a fake blue check mark on Twitter. I could have swore Will Rogers was following DeBoer to Alabama, but yeah, I'm almost positive Milroe has gone into the portal. So,
well, we know Rogers has gone into the portal. He's no longer committed to Washington. So, all right. Speaking of being no longer committed to Washington, I mean, that team is going to have a very, very hard reset. No Kalen DeBoer, no Ryan Grubb, who they didn't make the head coach. He said he wanted to be. So they must be getting ready to get a big name if they don't get Ryan Grubb. I would assume that Ryan Grubb is going to follow Kalen DeBoer now. But no Michael Penix Jr., no Jalen McMillan, no Roma Dunze, no Dylan Johnson. I think Dylan Johnson's out of eligibility. Jamar Muhammad, who made several big plays this year, including a pick 6 to keep them undefeated. No Will Rogers. I mean, I think we're talking about a TCU level reset at Washington next year, given everything that they're losing.
I think it's worse than that. What did TCU? TCU won at least 3-4 games this year, didn't they? I mean, we're talking about, we like Austin Mack, but this is a dude who, I get it's his second year at Washington, probably now going to be a completely different offense than what we thought and why we liked him going to Washington, who would technically be a true freshman, guys. For those of you who don't know, he reclassified. He was supposed to be a senior in high school last year. Didn't play that entire year. And we have unfortunately seen, and we can use the guy we talked about earlier in the show, in Quinn Ewers, we have seen that these guys who don't play struggle to really kind of get going. And now we're talking about him coming in, the only quarterback on the roster as of this moment, coming in, having to learn an entire new offense this spring, and whoever they decide to bring, the rumors are Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think that would be a smart hire at all, but we'll see what happens, especially not going into the Big Ten, but then going into the Big Ten, and they have a tough schedule. I mean, I predicted my 2024 12-team playoff last week before I even knew DeBoer was leaving. I had DeBoer still at Washington. I did not have them making the top 12 because of that schedule. So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, so we liked what Washington had left over after they lose this class. That was Tayshawn Lyons, Denzel Boston, a big wide receiver, a big possession wide receiver, and Jeremy Bernard to go along with Austin Mack or whomever they had at quarterback. Tayshawn Lyons entered the transfer portal. He's now at Washington. I don't know what's going to –
at Utah.
Or Utah, excuse me, Utah, yeah. He's at Utah. I have no idea what's going to happen with Jeremy Bernard. He looks like he's going to be the number 1 there. And then, Denzel Boston, while we like him, it's still a long shot. And we like him a little bit less, given that he's not associated with Kalen DeBoer now. So this is Washington's schedule. I've got it here. These schedules are starting to get tough with these mega conferences. All right, so they start off pretty easy with Weber State in Eastern Michigan, okay? Then they get Washington State with no Cam Ward. Then Northwestern. Actually, they can win some of these games. Rutgers, then this is when it gets hard. Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, USC, Penn State, UCLA, then finishing with Oregon. So Michigan, Indiana, USC, Penn State, Oregon. I mean, the way this Washington team is looking right now, though, it's going to be tough to get W's in those games.
Yeah, and I think what makes it even harder on that schedule when you look at it is the way it's split up. So, yes, they get Michigan at home, if that matters, but then you have to travel to Iowa next week. Then you get a break, but then you go to Indiana to play Indiana, come back to play USC at home. Then you go back across the country to play Penn State at home. Probably going to end up being their whiteout game, I would think. I mean, that's a hard schedule. That's one of the things like with Oregon, too. Oregon has the Texas schedule of the Big Ten, and like a lot of their big games are at home, and the games that they travel to are not that hard. So, like, that's where I think Oregon lucks out, especially with that roster, but that's where it's going to be. And I wonder real quick, LL did say that, and he's right. Milroe said he's staying. I misread what he said. So, yeah, he is staying with Alabama. So, likely going to be the starting quarterback for Kalen DeBoer.
He also asked over or under 6.5 wins Washington. The wins that I would give them are Weber State, Eastern Michigan, Washington State. Northwestern to me is a toss-up.
At home, I think they could possibly get it, though.
Northwestern.
I think they win the first 5. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Well, then they can beat UCLA, but that's still just 6. I mean, they're going to lose to Michigan. They're going to lose to Iowa. They're going to lose to USC probably.
Yeah. I think they lose to Penn State.
They're at Penn State. They're going to get smashed by Oregon.
So it comes down to Indiana. If we got them right around 6, if they can get that Indiana game or like,
which they could, they should be better than Indiana.
I give them the win at Rutgers. Rutgers actually had a really good defense last year, so like that, I don't know that that's actually an easy win. So like, I think 5 is very, very manageable. Then it comes
the plus money. If the plus money is on the under, I mean, I'm taking that all day.
Yeah, it really comes down to like, can they get like 2 of Rutgers, UCLA, Indiana, Iowa? Man, I think it would be very hard for Austin Mack to go into Iowa and just win that. So like, it's going to be close. I really don't know. I would probably take the under. I think they could easily get to 6 in a bowl game, but like, I don't know if they hit 7.
By the way, we should mention that the rumors is that Washington was in the running for Jed Fish at Arizona. But I was reading this morning that Jed Fish, anytime you hear a rumor about these coaches and they're all of a sudden they're restructuring their contracts.
Yeah.
Jed Fish getting the bag over there at Arizona. By the way, that Arizona 2024 is Washington.
Oh, I agree. I put them as my number 3 seed in the playoff next year. I talked about this when Kalen DeBoer was being discussed as going to Alabama. I don't think it was official by the time I went live. Why would you, if you're a Jed Fish, go to Washington? You are set up with what you've already built in Arizona. I think you're possibly the best team in the Big 12. You're guaranteed a playoff spot, probably as the number 1 or 2 seed in the Big 12. Why are you going into a loaded Big 10 where you're at best the 4th best team right now? Like, I wouldn't. If I were him, I said at the time I wouldn't do it. Sounds like he's not going to good because I love what he's building in Arizona.
One of like the critical things to figure out in 2024, going into 2024, as far as fantasy goes, is who is going to be taking over for Jacob Cowing. That's going to be a very valuable spot. The number 2 right there in Jed Fish's offense, taking passes from Noah Fafita on the other side of Tetaroa McMillan. The tight end there, the transfer from like Memphis, I can't remember his name. McLaughlin or something like that. He has an Irish last name. He's a good player too. I don't know if he has eligibility left, but we need to know who the number 2 wide receiver is for Arizona going into next season. All right, Matthew, lastly here, Cam Ward spurns the East-West Shrine Bowl, is headed to Miami. I got to give credit to, I listened to a lot of Le Batard show, and Mike Ryan was saying that this was a possibility, that Cam Ward was just holding out for more money, and that in his declaring for the NFL draft was a leverage play. It looks like it worked. I have to imagine he got 7 figures to go to Miami. And this is good. This is a good quarterback with Jacoby George, Xavier Restrepo, the veteran. And if Elijah Arroyo could stay healthy, this isn't the worst skill positions that you could have. I still think his wide receivers were better at Washington State last year. But, I mean, he gets the opportunity to prove himself and develop under Shannon Dawson and potentially make the jump next year. He has the potential. I wouldn't say he's there yet, but he has the potential to be a day 1, to hear his name called on day 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing fit because we like Shannon Dawson so much. I think the big question is really going to come down to, Mario Cristobal and what he let Shannon Dawson do. Because you can see a massive difference if you look at what Shannon Dawson did under Dana Holgorsen with Houston for multiple years. I mean, you're talking from 21 and 2022 season when he was with Houston, they were passing the ball over 50 to 55% of the time in neutral early down situations, and their pass success rate was also almost at 50%. But when you go and look at what Shannon Dawson had to do last year with Miami, now granted, there was a lot of flux at the quarterback position, right? Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt. Then they have to use true freshman Emory Williams. He ends up getting hurt. But they pass the ball in early and neutral situations 40% of the time. That ain't going to work for Cam Ward. Now, their pass explosiveness was over the average line. We have, again, I always suggest, click the link down below. I'll put it back in the description. Go to campuscanton.com, sign up, cost a cup of coffee, $2.99. $299 Go. We have coaching tools that you can go look at how each coach stacks up to the average. Their pass explosiveness was 1.6, which is just over the average line. The average line is at like 0.158. So like it wasn't even that explosive either. And where I think Cam Ward will be an intriguing fit is the fact that he will extend plays behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know that they'll play a ton. I don't have Miami's schedule.
I wanted to kind of outline what Cam Ward is for those who haven't watched.
I'll pull up Miami's schedule.
With those who haven't seen him, he has Johnny Manziel in his game. He has Russell Wilson in his game. He scrambles Tony Romo. He scrambles to throw. He can be a little bit chaotic. His first year at Washington State, the offense was very horizontal, and it was an issue. You know, him getting the ball, passing, getting completions in the intermediate and deep parts of the field. He corrected a little bit of that last season. By the way, he was fine at those kinds of throws at Incarnate Ward, where he won the Jerry Rice Award for the freshman award in the FCS level. So if he can take another step next year and show that he can still be consistent in the intermediate and deep parts of the field, that's really the only thing that's keeping him out of a confirmed first-round quarterback, because he has an elite trait in that ability to extend plays and avoid pressure.
So, God, I cannot wait for week 1 of college football next year. I don't know if you've looked at the schedule. There's so many great games like the kickoff classics. So Miami starts with Florida, which I think is a winnable game for Miami. Florida, a little bit on the downside. They actually have, in my opinion, a very favorable schedule. And they go Florida, A&M. This should be a win. So if we're giving them the win, Florida, that's 2. Ball State, USF. Then you have the new entrant into the ACC, Cal. I think they can beat Cal. Georgia Tech. Then their schedule gets difficult. The 3 hardest games on their schedule: at Louisville, Duke, and Florida State. So you get Duke and Florida State at home. Then they finish with Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. I don't know. Those Kyle McCord fighting Syracuse's might be pretty good. We'll see. But I think like their stretch is in the middle of the season against those 3 schools. I think if Cam Ward plays well and takes Miami to the play, I think they've got a realistic shot of winning the ACC. They don't play Clemson, so they won't play Clemson until possibly the championship game. I think it's between those 3, Miami, Clemson, and Florida State. It's really, I think, again, just going to come down to, does Mario Cristobal let Shannon Dawson run the offense he wants to? Because if he lets them run the offense that way, I think Cam Ward could have a really good season. But if he doesn't, and it becomes a very run-heavy offense, I don't know how that's going to look. Because, I mean, Mark Fletcher, I believe he's torn ACL. We haven't seen Gervonta Citizen in multiple years because of his injury. So I don't even know what that running backfield is going to look like. It might end up being Jordan Lyles, who they flipped from Ohio State. It's an intriguing team. I can't wait for spring to get here for Miami. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered through spring.
I think the thing that I love most about college football is the fact that there are completely brand new stories every single year, and it's not the same story year in and year out. In the NFL, we know Lamar Jackson is good. We know that that Patrick Mahomes is good, and those are going to be like the stories. In college football, we just had Nick Saban retire. You got Kalen DeBoer going from Washington to Alabama. Ohio State might look completely different than it has in years past. In 2024, they got 2 bona fide studs at running back. I just love the turnover, both the players and coaches in the college game. We'll be here to cover it all. In the comments, if you're watching this after we stop going live, let me know in the comments your thoughts about Cam Ward landing in Miami. Can he elevate his game to become a day 1 NFL draft pick? And then Isaiah Bond, what do you think about his landing spot with Texas? All right, y'all. Enjoy your Sunday, the NFL playoffs. My Detroit Lions playing at 8 o'clock tonight. I'll be watching that one. But all right, y'all. Peace.